Hello, hello, hello. Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream. I am Ash. I am the Redpanda Connect person, numero uno, because I mostly made it. And I am going to be talking about the fact that Redpanda Connect can now run in all of our cool Redpanda products, which is rather swish. I hope you will agree. Hold on, let me just get my stuff set up. I'm going to share some stuff. Hopefully, Yols can see this. Otherwise, please let me know. There's going to be QA stuff. Feel free to pop questions in the QA box throughout this process. I will try and address them as they come through, but then I'll put time at the end of this event to address all of the remaining questions. I'll do every single one. I don't care how long it takes. So please do put questions in there. Um, what else do I need to remind you all of? So there is for those interested in Redpanda Connect, and especially if you're extremely interested by the end of this stream, then there is going to be a hackathon coming up to essentially highlight all the cool AI features that we're adding to it. So stay tuned for that. There will be links in the chat, and there's also links on the website in case you want to go and peruse the website that I'm showing you right here. So this is redpanda.com/connect. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be demoing running Redpanda Connect in our cloud. So I'm going to be using the serverless product. But I think with the first couple of minutes of this stream, I'm actually just going to cover what is Redpanda Connect because I'm hyper aware of the fact that some people on this planet don't know what it is. So Redpanda Connect is quite a mature product. It's been in existence for almost a decade at this point. And it's a bit of a rebel, it's a bit of a renegade in the data space because it's essentially a reimagining of what a data connectivity and transformation engine can look like. So it's always been both. So obviously we emphasize all the connectors just because there's so many of them. And its functionality there is for consuming and producing data into a very vast swathe of both streaming and batch-based data products and protocols. So this thing is its bread and butter really is just reading data from places and writing it to places, and you can mix and match. And you can have multiple inputs, multiple outputs, all that stuff. You're going to be seeing basic configs on this stream. But if you go to the website, you go and peruse the documentation, you'll see there's lots of things on offer, and there's lots of interesting brokering patterns and how you can have various multiple inputs and multiple outputs all kind of working seamlessly together in a single streaming pipeline. The sorts of stuff that we emphasize when we're talking about Redpanda Connect is how simple it is. I'm hopefully going to be showing a lot of that in this video, but essentially it's very quick and easy to jump in and start playing with it. And that's all by design. It's both by the nature of how you configure it. The whole configuration experience is designed to be very easy and accessible. But it's also because of its architecture, it's very, very quick and easy to just run, especially on your local machine. You can just run it very, very fast and you can sort of iterate over different configs and use cases. So it's very quick to get experience with and get a feel for how it runs. And then when it comes time to deploy it, it's very easy to manage a deployment in a production environment because we get lots of logs, metrics, and tracing events. There's all kinds of observability, and those observability tools can be all sorts. You can mix and match and use whichever tools you've already got access to. So, for example, if you use Prometheus already, you can use that, or you can use StatsD or InfluxDB, all these different technologies for exposing the metrics that show you what's actually happening when you run. But also, if you want to, you can just run it with us. We'll run it for you now. And then you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Uh, so I'll show you all the connectors. because this is pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see. So from that page, redpanda.com/connect, you'll get links to the documentation at various points. There's a lot of documentation. Inside the components section, you can click this catalog and you can actually just see how many connectors we've got. The list here is a mixture of all the things that we can consume and write to. But also, there's a lot of transformation types in here. So I mentioned that this is also a transformation engine. And what I mean by that is, yes, you can do things like single message transforms, so mappings, filtering, masking, encryption, that kind of stuff. But you can also do enrichments. So you can use Redpanda Connect, for example, to consume data from a place and then enrich the data by referencing data from the messages to some third-party service, some cache or some database or some data store. And then you can enrich the data with the result from that and then write it somewhere else. And we've got all of these various processes and technologies to help you do that. And they're all sort of composable. So for example, we've got mapping languages here. We've got loads of them. We've got JQ. You can write transformations in JavaScript. You could do, there's WASM-based transformations. We've got a bunch of AI stuff. There's all these different things that you can do to data while it's being moved. And then if you want to do something more advanced, we've got concepts like a branch. So this is what the config actually looks like. So it's YAML. We're going to see more of that in a second because I'm actually going to do some configs. But to give you an idea of what kind of transformations this thing can do, it's actually quite advanced. So for example, you could hit Lambda functions. This is an example where you mutate the data into a new form, hit a Lambda function with that data, take the result, and then you can merge the result back into the original data. So there's lots of cool stuff. I advise people who, if you want to learn about all the capabilities that are within this, then go to the docs. But I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I actually want to show the interesting bit, which is us doing it for you. So let's go into that now. So what I've got, what I've prepared earlier is it's not cheating. This is just preparation. I've actually got a cluster on Redpanda's serverless product. So if you want to follow these steps, you can actually just sign up right now if you haven't already and get, oh, I have been logged out. Hold on, I'm going to log in whilst not sharing my screen because I do not want to get hacked. Please bear with me. This shouldn't take long. And it's almost done. But yeah, if you want to sign up for serverless yourself, it's pretty quick and you'll get credits. And just got to refine my demo. Okay, I'm going to reshare my screen. Desktop one. By the way, it is extremely loud thunder outside, so I'm not a superstitious man, but if things do go wrong, that's the first thing I'm going to be blaming. So anyway, so you've got Redpanda Production, Connect Demo. I don't want to do that one. Don't want to do dedicated. Do serverless. So we've got a serverless cluster. It's just the bog standard. This is just what you get if you just quickly sign up and use all the defaults. And then what I've done is I've created a topic called demo topic. And there's no messages in there currently because I've purged it. And then what I've done is I've created a user account called demo user. I am going to be leaking on this stream the credentials for this because I can't be bothered to set up secrets and stuff on my local machine. Please do not hack my topic. Although I guess if you want to interact with the demo, then I guess there's nothing I can do to stop you, basically. But what we've got is we've got a topic and a user that is able to access that topic. The topic's empty, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to interact with it. So I'm actually going to show you some Redpanda Connect. Why don't we do some of that? So if you install Redpanda on a local machine, you'll get the RPK command, and that actually gives you Redpanda Connect just out the box. So you don't have to install anything else. If you run a command, then it will automatically download a version if you don't have it already on your machine. So if I run RPK Connect and then list, for example, this is a command that lists all the different component types that we've got available inside the binary. So that's basically the catalog, except it's the binary itself giving you the full list. But there's more interesting stuff that you can do. So for example, I can create a new config. If I create the default, then it's just standard in to standard out with nothing going on. That's not very interesting. But if I were to specify, there's a language that you can use here, which is basically a thing slash a thing slash a thing. So for example, I could do AWS S3 slash a mutation processor and then slash Kafka. And then what that'll do is it'll create a config containing those components. This is a pretty convenient way of getting a config created. But obviously, you'll want to read the docs. At some point, you're going to want to read the docs just to understand what these things actually do. So it's not going to save you completely from using the internet. Sorry. Now, I do actually have some configs that I prepared earlier. So I'm going to walk you through what these actually do, and then I will probably run them. Is a nice interactive way of enlivening this stream. So I've got one config here. Yes, that is a password just in plain text. Don't worry about that. Don't look at it. Don't copy it. And what I've got here is I've got an input and an output. It's a very, very simple Redpanda Connect config. And what I'm doing is I have a generate input. And what that's going to do is it's just going to continuously generate data. So I'm going to use this in order to populate my demo topic with things. And what it has is an interval where we're saying every 1 second we want to generate a new message. And then we've got this mapping. Now this language that you see here, this is a standard language within Redpanda Connect. This is called bloblang. And it's basically a very, very simple, non-Turing complete way of transforming data. And it's got a bunch of functions, and the syntax is really nice for digging into like nested structures and doing cool things with the structured data. But in this case, all I'm doing is generating data. So there's no input to this mapping. It's just creating a new message from scratch. So what I'm doing is I'm creating an object with a field ID, and that's going to be a v4 UUID. We've got a field name. And what I'm doing is there's a function called fake. And what that will do is it will create a fake piece of data. So in this one, I'm creating a fake name. So it'll look like a full person's name. We're doing human names here, not pet names. And then we've got email, which will create something that looks a little bit like an email. It's not a real email, most of them. So don't worry about that. And then the output section, I've got my Kafka Franz outputs. This is how I'm going to write data to my serverless demo topic. And I can run that. I can actually run it. Isn't that amazing? RPK connect run is the command, and then I'll reference data in, and that's going to run data in. So this is just running on my local machine. We haven't touched the cloud product yet. I'm just showing you what connect looks like. But what we should have is we should have some data coming in. So here we go. You've got some data, and you'll notice it's in JSON format. So the reason why it's in JSON format is Redpanda Connect is pretty much completely unopinionated about what the data looks like. So you can just pass raw bytes, raw binary data if you want to. You can transform raw binary data as well if you want to. But because what I've done in my config is I have created a structured piece of data, and then I've written it without specifying how to serialize it. And what it does by default is JSON. So in this particular case, we're going to see JSON on the output, and that's what we would expect. Now, I do have another config called data out, and this is basically the opposite. So what it's going to do is we've got an input, which is Kafka. That's going to read from my demo topic. Again, don't look at this. That's secret information. And then I'm just writing the data to standard out. I'm going to run this on my local machine, and it's just going to hopefully read that topic. But then we've also got this bit here, which is a mutation. That's what we call a processor. This is how we do transforms to things. And this is a very simple single message transform where we're changing the email field. So we're going to reassign the email field to the input email field. And we've called a hash function. So we've hashed it with the SHA-256 algorithm. And then I've encoded it because that's raw bytes. That's raw binary data. So I've encoded it into hex so it can be nicely inserted into the JSON data. And then same again, standard out. And because I haven't specified how to serialize it, it's just going to be JSON. So if I run this, because we've already got data in our topic, I really hope, I'm very hopeful that we will see some data come through. We'll just give that a second. Here we go. And we've got some data. So that's pretty cool, isn't it? I'm actually going to run this in watcher mode. with this W flag. And what that's going to do is if I make edits to this config while it's running, it will actually re-parse the config and apply the changes. So I can show you this live experience. And I'm not going to run data in on my local machine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my free credits on Redpanda serverless to insert that data. So we've got this button here on the left, which you can click with your mouse, called connectors, and this is where all the new stuff comes in. So when I want to run Redpanda Connect, what I do is I create a pipeline, and that is essentially just a config. So I'm going to paste in my config that I created earlier. I have to give it a name, so I'm going to call this Connect Demo because my imagination is not there right now. And that's it. I can now create and it will run. How quickly is it going to run? Well, it should already be running. Let's see if we get some logs. So when Redpanda Connect's running on any of our products, what it will do is it will capture all the logs into a Redpanda topic. So you can actually access the logs in the UI here. So for example, we've got this listening for HTTP requests, blah, blah, blah. That's just the metric server spinning up. And we've got this log launching a Redpanda Connect instance. Well, that's good to know, isn't it? And that's it. This is now running. So if I go back to this page, we'll see that data is coming through. So these are messages that my serverless hosted Redpanda Connect instance is writing into my demo topic using credentials that you didn't look at. And then it is being consumed by this instance that's running locally. So we've got that's a full pipeline from generate made up data to Redpanda to stand out. I'm going to make some changes because you might be thinking, well, I don't like the look of that JSON. Well, we can format it. So like I said, if you don't specify how to format the data, then by default, it's JSON and it's squished JSON. Whereas if you do something like this is a mapping that takes the root of the document we're talking about and it formats it as YAML. Well, now we have YAML data coming through. I'm going to slightly modify this so we actually get line breaks, so it's a little bit clearer what's going on. But you can see on the right, it's automatically seeing that the file has been edited and it's restarting the pipeline. So now we've got nicely formatted YAML data because everybody likes YAML. Please add your anger and frustration in the chat if you're not a YAML fan, and that will all be absorbed. And there we go. We're seeing the data come through. Now, you made a config, you're happy with it, but you want to try some new stuff, right? I hope that the demo so far has emphasized just how quick and easy it is to run something and see it going. Now, obviously, when you're running it locally, I think it's fair to expect things to be quite responsive, quite reactive. Obviously, a lot of services that people are used to, a lot of tools in this data engineering space of ours, they're not quite as fast and they're not quite as simple, but we're used to things running this fast, right? But on serverless, you might think, oh, actually, it would take a long time for me to make a change in it to be reflected. But I hopefully will be able to show you now that it's not. So let's imagine I want to add a new field. So I'm going to add an age field to my random data. I'll choose a random int, and then I'm going to limit it. Maximum age is going to be 199 because I'm an optimist. So what I've just done is I've clicked edit and then I've submitted it. And what we should get is the service restarts. And oh, before I even had a chance to amass any kind of suspense, it has already reflected that change. So now we're getting that data coming through here. Now you'll notice that the age is a string here because YAML is YAML. So what I can do instead is I can make age a number. So let's try that and we'll see how it goes. And here you go. Age is now an actual number. You can do whatever you want with these mappings. There's a lot of flexibility here. There's a lot of stuff that you can do. And then obviously you can choose to keep it in a structured form and then use things like, you can use things like schema registry service. So obviously Redpanda supports schema registry protocols, so you can use that to transform data and or just validate it, that kind of stuff. But also in the mappings themselves, you can do some real dirty things. So I mean, I could for example take a hash of the entire object and then insert that in the payload, that sort of stuff. In fact, actually, you know what? I'm going to do that right now. We'll do SHA-256, and then I'm going to encode that. Let's do base64 encode. And then I'm going to capture that in a field called the hash. So what that is going to do is it's going to make a hash of the actual JSON blob, because that's the default serialization format, and I didn't specify anything else. Hang on a minute. Root.string. Okay, there we go. It didn't like that because I didn't specify how to serialize it. So I'm just doing string now. And there we go. We've got our hash coming out in this thing. I think that's all I was going to demo, because we are doing the thing, we're running it, we've got the logs. What else was I going to mention? So if you use the dedicated, you also get metrics and dashboards and stuff like that. Obviously, this is very, very early days. So the functionality right now is fairly bare bones. You can specify your configuration, you can run it. There's metrics, logs, and all that stuff, but we're going to be adding a heck of a lot more. The reason why my credentials are just bare here isn't because we don't support secrets in Redpanda Connect. It's just because we haven't built out the experience of that in Redpanda Connect on cloud. But obviously, we will be doing that at a time in the future. So keep an eye out for that. We're also going to be sprucing out the editing experience and all the kind of tooling around all this stuff. So there's going to be a lot of exciting things coming. I mean, the intention is for this to be the ultimate place to run Redpanda Connect. So it's got a hill to climb, because running it locally is very convenient. But there's a lot of stuff that we can do to make things cooler and awesomer and more lit in the cloud. Right, I'm going to go to questions. There was a question: will there be a recording of this available later? Yes, there will be a recording of this later. Does anybody else have a question? I'm not very good at Zoom. I'm a bit of a noob when it comes to Zoom conferencing. Let's see. I'm just going to leave this running in the background so that there's more opportunities for this to go wrong, because I like to live dangerously. Will the cloud editor support autocomplete in the future? Yes, it actually will. So this is happening behind the scenes. The editor right now is very, very bare bones, but we're already building the bit that is going to give you autocomplete. So the idea is that you're going to be able to come to the editor and you'll be able to use that to determine what you can do. So all the fields within Generate, for example, we'll be able to see that just with autocomplete, all that stuff. So yeah, that's going to be coming. Also linting, things like that. The linting within Redpanda Connect, I'm just going to show you this right now because it's way cool. If I make a config error and I run rpk connect lint on my data out file, it'll tell me field consumer group not recognized. So you get these really nice linting errors that highlight the specific line. That's all baked into Redpanda Connect as it is. And all of that stuff is going to be accessible and work in the cloud as well. More questions. Oh, okay, interesting. What limitations to Lambda functions? So I think on our side, I'm not really sure. It will probably be a limitation to the account that's running it. So it'll depend on the product, whether it's BYOC, whether it's dedicated, that kind of stuff. But also it's kind of a vague answer, unfortunately, because I don't know much about Lambda's pricing and how it works. But the way that it works generally is it's not really a thing that the client side on Redpanda Connect deals with. So if you do hit limits, then we'll obviously the normal error handling Redpanda Connect and stuff will have to kick in for that. There's questions around pricing. I'm a I'm a techie. I'm building the tech. Unfortunately, I don't know about the pricing. You're gonna have to get in touch with nasty sales, and have a lovely conversation with them. And I'm sure they won't try and sell something to you. But yeah, unfortunately, I can't answer questions around pricing. Streaming to iceberg topics. So it's kind of doable right now with stuff out of the box, but there's not like a convenient connector for iceberg topics. There's various distinctions here because there's going to be the ability to obviously do iceberg stuff with just Redpanda itself, which isn't even necessarily going to be a Connect thing. But then there's also separately the ability to write to an iceberg table from Redpanda Connect. That's on our backlog, something that we're going to be doing because right now it is technically feasible, but there's not like a convenient, yummy connector for doing it. So it's something that we are going to be looking at. But I assume what you're mentioning there is a separate product. Can you show CDC? So we do have uh, we've got connectors for SQL stuff. But currently we don't have CDC available for Postgres, MySQL, and the main ones. I would say stay tuned on that. And it's definitely worth keeping in touch and refreshing the Redpanda news once in a while because I suspect, in a very non-binding way, that there might be announcements on that in the near future. Do you have a spec for your mapping language somewhere? So if you go to the docs, um, there's a section called guides, and in there's a whole like guide section for Bloblang. So Bloblang is the mapping language, and what we've got here is we've got lots of stuff. So there's a Bloblang walkthrough, which takes you through all the main concepts. So it starts off with the basics, and then you go to the more advanced stuff like walking, trees, and nested, all kinds of Kafaf. There's a reference for all of the various functions that are available and all the methods. So the methods are essentially the things that you can act on pieces of information, whereas the functions are ways of extracting information from the environment. So for example, you can generate IDs or you can check the host name of the machine, stuff like that. That does actually bring me into one interesting thing. So on cloud, we have restricted the number of connectors in the catalog. I was supposed to mention that earlier, but essentially what we've done is we've reduced the number of connectors. So if you look at the catalog, if it doesn't already, it will eventually tell you whether it's supported in cloud. So we don't have that distinction yet. But what will happen is there'll be a column here that describes whether or not something runs in our cloud environments and which cloud environments, that kind of stuff. And yeah, we're slowly going to bring them in. So it's similar to when things are certified and community licensed. So whether we support something officially or not is a process of due diligence, making sure that we're equipped to support those connectors. So even though you can run them, we might not necessarily give you official support for them. And there's a slow process to bring things into certified to make sure that we do support them. And with cloud, it's the same thing. We're slowly bringing components into cloud on a case-by-case basis when we're confident that we can run it in a stable and safe way. So there are some components that currently aren't usable in cloud, and that also extends to Bloblang. So with Bloblang, for example, you can read files off disk and you can read environment variables and stuff like that inside your mapping, and that's not available in cloud currently. You probably don't really need it in cloud, to be fair. But yeah, this is where you do all your Bloblang stuff. So there's also like a section on advanced Bloblang. This is like more extreme examples. And in the walkthrough itself, it guides you through different ways of running various tooling to help you get up to speed with Bloblang. I am way behind on my Q&A. So we are at the 30-minute mark. So if you are a 30-minuter and you have a hard stop, then I advise you to go away and go do your job, your work, or whatever other responsibilities you have. But obviously, I'm going to stick around for a little bit. I do have some time. I'd like to try and get through these questions, so I'm not a liar. Let's go through these. Besides JSON and YAML, are other formats like message pack and protobuf supported? Yes, they are. So if you go into our processes section, there's a few. So for example, you can Avro encode. and you can do protobuf stuff. So we've got a protobuf processor. If you use there's a schema registry encode and decode processor available. So obviously they will support Avro, protobuf, and JSON schema. So we support all of those things. There's also message pack. There's a message pack processor. And in bloblang, there's also a bunch of stuff. So there's sometimes you'll find a bloblang method for doing it. So for example, we've got a whole parsing and formatting section. So I can parse from bloblang, I can format JSON, message pack, XML, YAML, and on the parse side, I can parse CSV, URL encoded like form data from HTTP requests, JSON, message pack, Parquet. I can parse a URL into a structured form, XML, YAML, all that stuff. So there's lots and lots of flexibility there, and obviously it's expanding constantly over time. I hope I've answered that. Does Hosted Connect support AWS private link? Not currently, I'm going to say. I don't know private link, but I'm going to assume not unless you can hook into it via other products. Obviously, we support SQS, SNS, and a bunch of other queue systems into AWS. So sometimes it's just a configuration thing that you would do it indirectly through that, but we definitely don't have that as a native connector right now. But obviously get in touch and we can look at maybe prioritizing it. Can you remove fields from the payload too? Yes, yes you can. I'll do that. I'll do that for you right now. Are we still getting data out? Hold on, I need to fix the linting errors first. I'm not sure if I stopped my data generator. If I was smart, okay, I didn't because I'm not smart. So for example, I can say root dot, let's say name is deleted. And that will, once it's updated, it will remove the name field. And bloblang itself, I'll show you a little bit of bloblang because bloblang is pretty cool. You can use like conditional expressions as values. So if this dot name is, let's say, dot length is greater than 5, then it's deleted. So deleted is a value. And when you assign it to something, the field gets deleted. But if it's not assigned, so if this if expression doesn't trigger, then it won't be deleted. And obviously you can add an else and all of the things. There's also like a concept of matching and a bunch of other stuff. What do you believe the most valuable use cases do you believe is proven in the future? So the main issue, if I was gonna quantify like what's the biggest what's the largest grouping of value that Redpanda Connect gives organizations, it's the solution to disparate data products that different teams use. So if you're an organization, you have to interact with other organizations that have different protocols, different technologies and things, or if you're a large enough organization that you have that problem internally, you end up with all these various products that you have to deploy on almost like a case-by-case basis in order to hook those pieces of these sources and sinks of data together. What these connectivity tools do well, so for example, Kafka Connect, or what are the other ones? There's some other ones out there. My mind is blank right now. But what they do is they allow you to do like the connectivity stuff and use it as a product. So you're not building a whole new solution yourself. But the problem with that is often that they become very, very complicated and they become cumbersome to run. So the idea of a service like this that is so easy to set up and it's so easy to maintain is that we're able to solve that problem in a much cheaper and more affordable and more accessible way. But also the breadth of the connectivity is then also compounded by the fact that it's got transformations as well. The transformation suite is almost as vast as the connectivity suite, which means when you've got disparate sources of data, you often always need some sort of transformation to make the data look how you need it in the destination layer. So often a lot of the tools that just focus on connectivity, they need to be paired with something, or you tack on an extra product to add the transformations that you need, or you end up writing your own custom code for it. And what we're very, very good at here with Redpanda Connect is giving you a massive Swiss Army knife of transformations that you might need to do that can greatly simplify the deployment, because then you're only deploying and managing one thing. It's just a simple config, single binary. It's a much easier way of solving that issue, and that's really the only way that you end up avoiding all these bespoke pieces of software. Because if the tool that you're trying to deploy for those disparate networks isn't good enough for the people running it, then they will want to move on to something else. They don't want to keep maintaining it over time. They'll want to build some bespoke software that ends up being more expensive. What else do we have? Is there a connector or branch for windowing? Yes. So windowing support is kind of second-class citizen, because Redpanda Connect kind of prides itself on being stateless. The idea that you can just tear them down, they're crash resilient. There's no state anyway. You don't have to recover. If something happens to a Redpanda Connect instance while it's running, you just start it up again, and then it will just go. It just carries on where it left off. And that's a big part of the philosophy of building out the connector ecosystem. However, there will be scenarios where you do need some sort of windowing. What we actually find in practice is a lot of problems that get solved with windowing. You can sometimes solve them in another way. So, for example, we have a section called cookbooks in the documentation, and here we've actually got a way of joining streams. So you have two separate streams, and you need to join them by some sort of identifier, some shared identifier. We actually have a full solution for how you can do that without windowing. You don't need any sort of window. And the way that we do it is we utilize caches. So if you've got like Redis or something already deployed, or memcached, or a compacted topic, or any of these other mechanisms, you can actually use that cache with a TTL that essentially becomes your window. And you kind of flip the problem on its head, and then all you have to do is have a nice, neat pipeline that has dead letter queues, a concept of retries, and back pressure. And then you actually end up with a system where you can have almost like arbitrarily large windows, because the cost is just how much storage you're willing to cache. And when things go wrong, you can just either backfill those caches, or you just have your retry logic do that naturally with dead letter queuing. And we basically cover most of those concepts in this cookbook. And the configs are relatively simple. So this is a section of config that reads messages, does a bit of a mapping, stores that in a cache, and then the piece that hydrates it looks like this. So that creates a mapping to what is the information we need to use in order to obtain the data that we're joining against, which is usually the ID. And then we get the thing that we're looking for, and then we have this result map, which is how do you want to take that cache data and complement the original message. And what we're doing here is we're just adding like a new article field. So there's examples of stuff like that here, where you might be surprised that you have a use case that traditionally uses Windows, where you now have more state because the windowing is going to have state. So now you've got more state that you have to maintain, and maybe that's a bit of a headache. You don't like, it's a system that's maybe a bit difficult to understand, or it just doesn't run particularly well. You might be surprised to find that actually there's a solution where you don't need windowing. But if you do need windowing, we actually have we call them buffers, because it essentially decouples the input data from the output data. But we've got one called system window. And what that does is it does literally just make arbitrary windows of data. And you can actually process a batch of data. So you imagine you've created a window, an aggregate of messages. You can actually process that window in bloblang in order to extract the piece of info you want from that data. So we do have an example here where we have like an aggregate. So we're looking at registration plates from a window of data, and what we do is we reduce them to only those that are unique, and then we count the length. So that's an aggregation of the window, and we haven't really done proper windowing, because what happens here is the window is in memory with this component. So if your service crashes during a window, what happens is when it starts back up again, it rereads the Kafka offset that it needs in order to repopulate the last window. Obviously, it's not a perfect fit for use cases that you might have been using windowing for currently, because tools that The trade-off with tools that are more windowing focused is that they're more complicated to set up, and that is usually because they have a lot of resiliency and there's a lot of things that need to be solved in order to make sure it's a production ready system. So this isn't going to solve all of those use cases, but in the future we might actually have almost like a mini Flink type component, and what it will be is just a plugin for Redpanda Connect. So it'll just be an optional thing that you could choose to use, and it's going to be an opt-in, and hopefully a lot simpler because that's our thing. Apache Arrow is a good example that's not in the list yet. So there's plugin APIs and they're very well documented. So what's the easiest way of me finding that for you? If you go to, so Connect is Redpanda Connect. The engine, the underlying engine that is essentially how you build all these plugins and stuff, that's a repo called Benthos. This is the old name of the original project. And this exists still because this is still the engine. If you want to write plugins, there's examples right here. And there's also YouTube videos, and there's also an example repository of plugins. It's very quick and easy. It's in Go, but it's very, very quick and easy to write a plugin. So this one, for example, generates gibberish data. And as you can see, it's fairly small. It's a fairly small implementation. But what we do have users doing today is they will implement things like transformations with protobuf definitions. The problem with doing that in a generic way is you don't benefit from the type safety that's compiled in. But what you can do is you can create a plugin that will use those type safe definitions to do the transformations that you want, and then you can pass it elsewhere. And obviously then you've got it all compiled into the binary. Plugins in Redpanda Connect actually get compiled into the binary. If you don't want that, there is also the WASM support. So we've got WASM as a plugin option. It's the same APIs as a Redpanda function. So if you've already done that and you've got one that does some sort of like arrow-based transformation, obviously there's a big benefit there of the memory movement. So if you want to define a transformation using that, then you're free to do so. We will probably have more and more Apache Arrow type components in the future. So for example, we've got Parquet as like a format in and out, and then obviously to some extent overlaps a bit with Apache Arrow. So we'll probably have more and more stuff over time. But because it's more of an efficiency of sharing memory, and we're kind of focused on, we're almost always being deployed in a scenario where there's movement of data that's being read from one place to another. So there has to be that movement, that copying. It's not really a thing that we focused on at this point. I hope I answered that well enough. How RP can support a use case when message is published to RP or an Avro format and it's required to export the messages to a file in XML format. So I can actually show you. You might even be able to do that just in bloblang as well. But we've got processors. So for example, if you have a Kafka input, there's a processor to read it in Avro form. You essentially specify an operator to JSON or from JSON. And what you'll need to specify is the schema. And that will pull it and extract it into a structured form. And then with a bloblang mapping, you can do, so for example, here, I can do root equals root.format XML. And what that will do is it will format an XML. So hopefully we'll see that now. There we go. So now we've got XML documents coming out. The way that works is kind of limited. You can't get exactly the XML that you want. You'd need to have like another XML transform afterwards, which you might have to do as a plugin, but you can definitely get XML format out. And there's a guide in the docs. So if you look at the bloblang documentation, you'll be able to find the XML function, format XML, and then that should give you some guidance as to how to make this look how you want it. So for example, if you've got annotations, stuff like that, we should be able to do some of that stuff. So yeah, in your case, there might also be, let me have a look, guides, bloblang, methods. You might be able to parse Avro here as well. If your Avro schemas are stored in schema registry, then that would be a separate thing. You'd use the schema registry processor to decode that. So for example, we've got schema registry decode. And for that, you basically specify your URL and whatever auth fields you need, and then that will just work. It'll just do the thing. So it might be a sim. I'm not. I need to know more about the use case, but I would imagine that's a fairly straightforward use case. Is there a central management tool as a wrapper for Redpanda? So that's kind of what RPK is. So RPK is a tool that you get when you download Redpanda on a local machine. And what this is for is it's essentially for doing exactly that. So you manage your cluster and you can see exactly what's happening in terms of what are the topics, what about consumer groups, all of that stuff. You can also manage the schema registry server. Obviously, on the Redpanda product, there's lots of utilities here. So, for example, I can go into topics and I can look at my topic. I can delete records. I can inject records. I can scan what records are in there. I can have a look at consumer groups and I can do all kinds of stuff here. So I can delete consumer groups. I can add new ones, all that kind of stuff. Um, the UI here is even better when you've got dedicated. There's things like dashboards, metrics, and stuff like that as well. And yeah, that's essentially what this is. This what this is for. Redpanda, essentially Redpanda console inside the cloud, and it's all there to help you manage a Redpanda cluster and modify it. So if you want to modify ACLs and stuff like that, you can do all of that stuff within the UI here. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop my pipeline and then I'm going to delete my credentials so that I can't be hacked, and delete my user here because we don't need it anymore. Stop this one as well. Right, have I caught up successfully with all the questions? I think I have. I do need to leave, unfortunately, but it's been a hoot. Hopefully that's been fun and stimulating for the audience. It's been very stimulating for me. If you have more questions, get in our Slack groups, our Discord. We use email as well if you want to use that. Get your questions to us by whatever means. You can find me in person. I'm not going to tell you where I live, but you'll find a way. And yeah, any inquiries? I mean, try playing with it. Basically, is my recommendation. That's how I work. That's how I function. I just like to get something, get my hands on it, and then just use it. So do that, please. But also just come and reach out to us if you want to understand more, see more of the capabilities. You can use the docs for that as well if you want to just see what the capabilities are. And thank you. I'm going to turn my camera off.